So I want to thank everyone for coming in for this special night, having my dear friend Sandro present. I want to just thank a few people, Pro Photo Daily for always helping us out, Photo Shelter, Epson, American Photography, and Archive Magazine. They're always around helping us out. Anyone who misses this presentation, you can find it probably in 3 or 4 days on our YouTube channel. And when you get there, you could subscribe. We'll put the address in the chat room, and we will now turn it over to my dear friend Sandro. It's all yours. We'll get you to share. We'll get Jay to put up the presentation, and off we go. Thanks, Sandro.
Thanks so much, Frank. It's great. I'm so happy you finally let me on your show after about 4 years of begging you. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Frank.
We don't let just anyone on, Sandro.
I thought I was gonna have to become a war photographer. Get on. Now, actually, Frank has been asking me for years and years and years, and it's just been mostly scheduling. Frank and I go way back. He's one of my dearest friends. I love Frank to bits. So, so thanks for having me on, Frank, and thanks for everybody for joining. I really appreciate it, everybody. And so, what's going to kind of happen? It's going to, I'm going to try to, it's going to start a little slow. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about, maybe a little bit about my life, a little bit about growing up and things like that, and then we're going to get into a little video, and then we'll start talking about maybe some of the younger, more important images of my career that really got me known as Sandro the brand, and going into a little bit of the new work that we've done in the last few years. Okay. So I would think, I would hope that any time during the presentation, except for probably the video, it'll be a little bit tough. But if anybody has any questions at any time, I would hope that you would feel free to just stop us and talk. This is, very open, very casual, and I'm really here for you. And I want to make sure that you walk out of here at the end of the evening knowing a little bit more about me, and maybe something that helps you become better at what you're doing or trying to achieve in your life and in your career.
Yeah, and you could also put any questions in the chat room, and I'll be screening those, and I could interject those with Sandro as well.
Great. That's perfect, Frank. So Jay's going to be running the show there on his end. So Jay, I'm up ready for that first image. We'll go right to the image there. Okay, Jay. Alrighty. So here is a picture of me and my mom and dad. And this is probably just one of two, three images that I have of my father. And, the title of this was, Tragic Beginnings. And the reason why I start here, because, I really kind of believe that my photography career started at about 5 years old without a camera. Um, I remember it was a night in January 1964. I had just turned 5 years old, and it was, pretty much like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. It was late at night. My father should have been home from work already. We had just moved into this brand new little ultra small, tiny little house in a new section in Elgin, Illinois. And me and my mom were up on the couch waiting for my father to get home. And I remember it was hard to forget, but it was an incredibly, incredibly foggy evening. It was, probably about 8 o'clock, and we're sitting outside, and you can kind of see the headlights coming down the street. And of course, we get excited because we think Papa's finally home, and you see the orange uh, turn signal turn on, and the car turns into the driveway, but it's not my father's car. And a few seconds later, a couple of gentlemen walk out. They have these long black coats and black fedoras on, and my mother walks over to the door. I walk behind my mother, holding on to my mother. I remember, being a little bit timid and scared, not knowing who these men are. And my mother opens the door, and they introduce themselves. And at that point, just minutes into the conversation, they told my mother that my father had been killed in an automobile accident. Um, my mother went into this extremely, extremely deep, deep, deep wail. She just screamed and fell to the floor, crying. I remember tumbling on top of her, holding her, and it was a day that, probably changed my life as, this young 5-year-old boy would now become
What?
a young.
I thought this was the key. I'm so silly. I know, you're tired.
Mute
Oh,
that, Jay, whoever that is. Dumbass. Okay.
Um, I would, 5 years old, and I would become, pretty much a young man at 5 years old, having to help my mother take care of my younger brothers and sisters. But the reason why I say I think I became a photographer that day was, or it was, one of the points in my life that helped me become a photographer because it was a vision, a feeling that I'd never felt before. And the moment has been frozen in my mind since the day it happened. I mean, the whole thing, the street lights, the turd signal, the fog and the lights, the two men getting out of the car, walking to the door, the scream, the holler from my mother. And, as photographers, we are very sensitive to noise, to visuals, and we don't forget things like that. So that was a little bit of the beginning. Um, Jay, we can go to another image here. So these are images that I grew up with. Okay, so at the age of 7 years old, I was shown the photograph of the automobile in which my father was killed in. And this would be basically image number two that would affect me. An image that would never leave my mind again, never leave my memory. I could almost if my brain could make a photograph, I could put that photograph on this screen for all of you to see just because it's so vivid. It was a newspaper clipping. It was black and white. It was very, very, very grainy. But that was all part of a moment that I'll never forget. So few years go by and we're now into the 60s, and I'm old enough that my mother starts sending me off to the grocery store about a mile away. And I would go to this grocery store, and it was here. Uh, I, I believe this whole group will remember, we used to go to the Jewel Oscars or wherever we lived, and there would be a magazine rack that was a half an aisle long, 100 feet long. There'd be thousands of magazines. And whenever my mother sent me over there for milk, bread, whatever we needed for the house, I mean, I would virtually spend an hour in the magazine rack. And this is during the days that there was Life magazine and Time magazine and Look magazine. I mean, these great, great, great magazines, news magazines that had photographs that were double page spreads, not 2 by 2 on our phone images. And Sports Illustrated was another one that always had an open sequence. It had a double page spread of one of the greatest moments in sports that happened that week. And these photographs, now I didn't even realize at the point right now that I'm really looking at photography. I'm not quite figured this whole thing out yet. That someone takes a picture and it goes into a magazine, people see it, and people begin to get feelings. Okay. Jay, go to the next image. A lot of us have seen these images. And Jay, you can go probably, I'd say about every 10 seconds, you can go to the next image, please. So this would be images that, they weren't all seen in one trip to the store. These were several trips to the store. This was maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years going back and forth. I mean, I lived at home. I'm going through a very, very, very difficult time in my life. I'm a I'm a young boy who doesn't have a father. I'm struggling. I've got this single mother who is an immigrant who we unfortunately she can't go to work because of her well, mostly because she has children, but a lot of it comes from education and lots of it comes from a language barrier that she had. And so we were on mega survival mode at this time. And I myself was going through a lot of changes as a young man, being very troublesome and experimenting with things that I shouldn't have been experimenting with, getting in some trouble, and definitely seeking out something in my life. And as I'm going to the store, I'm beginning to understand that not only do I have a troubled life, a troubled childhood, but the world's in trouble. There's things
Sandro,
going on, there's things going on all over the world that are troublesome. And I begin to feel things in my gut, in my stomach, in my head. I start feeling things like sorrow, empathy, fear, interest, confusion. And it was these images that started setting in my mind that started developing who I was going to become in later years.
Sandro, how many brothers and sisters?
Frank, I had four brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, my two youngest, one was a step, but my two youngest, natural, they were younger than me, and unfortunately, they're both gone today. I think a lot of that probably comes from the childhood that we were brought up in. It was very difficult, not having a father, living under the conditions. Not that they were horrific conditions, but they were just very difficult conditions. It was definitely survival mode. We had some pretty good neighbors, Frank, that helped take care of us, and I had a great zia and zio, which is aunt and uncle in Italian, that definitely helped me get through a lot of the things that I did. But I was in heavy search uh, for a father, and I was looking in coaches, I was looking in other friends' fathers. I was just trying to figure it all out, and I was really trying to stay out of trouble. That was my big goal, and it really truly came, Frank, to photography. Images like this that started to develop me into what I would become. And very soon here, Jay's going to come upon a couple of images that will be the turning point in my whole life.
So, Sandro, as a kid, and you see these images, was it at that moment that you realized there was something different, that something was captivating you, or is it in retrospect?
Frank, I think I think it's actually, it's in these aisles that things are beginning to change. I'm beginning to really feel something. I'm really feeling the power of what a camera, what a man, a woman could do with this little piece of equipment in his hand, how he could change the thoughts, the vision, the feelings, the idealisms that a country could have. And you know, if you saw that image of Nick Oots of the Vietnamese woman who had just been burned in by the napalm. I mean, that was one of the two images, that one and the one by Eddie Adams, that really, our government took a look at and said, you know what, enough's enough. And that's where the Vietnam War stopped. Now, I wouldn't find all this out until later because I'm really right now only about a 15, 16-year-old kid. But then one of these trips to the grocery store, Frank, I pick up a magazine called American Photography. And in that magazine, there are two images. And at this point, I didn't know who Irving Penn was. I had no idea who Picasso was. And you'll see the image after this is the image of Celeste, the great French theater actress. Now, this was a double page spread, Colette and Irving Penn. And I'm sitting in my bedroom and I'm looking at these two unbelievably powerful black and white images and go, what am I looking at? what am I looking at? I was shaken. I was blown away. I was moved. These are portraits. I don't know who these people are. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I being affected like this here? Something changed in me right there, Frank. And I knew right there that day, sitting on my bed, holding that magazine for $1.95, that this is what I had to do in my life. So, I started working, I was always, cutting grass, shoveling snow, but now I had this purpose of buying this camera. And from that point, I went out and bought this new camera. That's not, it wasn't a new, it was the Nikon F. It was, an old 1968 Nikon F. And that's where it began, Frank. And I just started taking pictures, by myself. I had no money to go to school. I mean, I never was in a position monetarily, and never had the force behind me, the encouragement behind me to go to school. It was just not in our deck of cards. And Frank, I ended up finding a small community college in my town in Elgin called Elgin Community College that I ended up going to for a little over a year. And it had a couple of teachers there that took me under their wing. And again, it was two men. And so I really took to these two guys. And again, looking probably for that father figure. And these two men knew a little bit about my story, knew a little bit about my upbringing and a little bit about, the challenges that I had in my life, and took me under their wing and really embraced me and, poured it out, and encouraged me to go out there and make, to do something with this talent that they saw that I had. At this point, I had, I felt I had zero talent. I didn't have any.
So Sandro, what's going on in the house, in your home, and now you want to be a photographer? Were your brothers or sisters supportive? Did your mother get it? This art world that maybe you're going into. I mean, like, what were the hurdles there?
Well, Frank, everybody was pretty much on their own. Again, my mom was just surviving, just putting food on the table. Brothers and sisters are all running off doing their thing. I'm doing my thing, trying to figure this out. How do I get into this business? I remember asking an uncle after I left this community college for $1,200 to go start a business. Can you imagine asking somebody for $1,200 to start a business? Uh, and God bless his heart, he said no. He said, you know what, there's photography is just not a job. That's that he goes, I don't know anybody who's a photographer. It's not going to work out. He had a gas station. He wanted me to come to work at the gas station. And so, I remember sitting on the stairs there after he didn't give me the money, and I was crying, and I was just trying to wondering what I was going to do. And, you just figured it out. I just figured it out, Frank. I just basically found somebody in the suburbs that I got a little bit of education from, and started saving my money and started buying equipment. But so we don't get too lost in all of that, into that childhood stuff. But what you're going to see now, this team is going to see now. I put together a little bit of a video, and we'll be able to talk about some of the work after the video. But you'll see, I think what you're going to see in this video is some works that kind of are branded Sandro portraits. Um, you know, Not that I could own the look, like I said, I was a huge fan of Irving Penn's Avedon, Karsh, Scribnesky, yeah, even a little bit of Mark Hauser back in the day. There was a lot of guys that I was following. I started collecting books at the age of 16, 17 years old. And to date, I probably have well over 2,000 books. I would buy these books, Frank. This is really, after my ECC education, I think it really came from these books. I would buy these books and I would sit with them for hours and hours and hours, and I would dissect them. I would look at these and I would look at where the light came from. I would look at the composition. I would try to get into the head of the photographer and try to get into the head where the photographer had brought the sitter. Why is the sitter got his eyes closed, or why is his eyes wide open? Why is one eye covered? Why is one hand covering the eye? Why is there pain there? Why is there somebody crying? What's going on here? What's going on between this connection between this photographer and this sitter? It's so important for me to understand the process and the reason and try to get into the heads of these photographers so I could develop my own look, develop something that I felt was mine. And why was I going there? And I resorted back to my childhood so often. When I sit there in front of a sitter, there's so often that I'll go back to a time, in my childhood, and that will help me bring out uh, the feeling that I'm looking for in my sitter. I'm very, very, very hands-on with my sitters. I treat a superstar like Michael Jordan as much as I do a young lady, a young man who's come into my studio for the first time, who's never been in front of a camera, and I want a portrait of this person. I mean, I don't differentiate stardom from realism. Everybody is treated the same, and they walk in, they're respected, they're loved, they're usually hugged. I use my hands a lot on my subjects. I touch my subjects. I touch my subjects' cheeks, their shoulders. I hold their hands while I'm shooting them, photographing them, not shooting them. I try not to affiliate the word shooting in photography because of the negative connotation it has. So I always try to say when I'm photographing them or creating with them or collaborating with them. But I will have my hands holding their hands as I'm behind the camera talking to them, and feeling and sometimes squeezing them. And I'm telling them stories, or I'm trying to get them to go to a place that I need them to go to. Often I've spent time with each of my sitters to find out a little bit about them before we actually go into motion together. I'll find out if they have family, if they have children, if they have pets, dogs. There's all kinds of things that I use that will help me be able to bring out emotion, some type of an emotion with somebody when I'm talking to them. And sometimes it can get pretty painful, and I have to apologize, afterwards and let them know I'm sorry. I just needed to go to a place where I needed to get something from you. I'm not a screamer. A lot of photographers are big screamers, or they try to jolt something out of you. I like to talk to somebody, and I like to try to bring them to think about something in their head of a scenario that I'm throwing at them. And that's how I get the looks that I'm looking for. I'm not a screamer. I'm very gentle, very respectful when I'm photographing these people. These people are sitting down for me, giving me a piece of their life, a piece of their story, and sometimes it's the truth, sometimes it's a lie. I mean, so, people don't walk in, ever want to look like themselves. They all want to look like James Clooney, or they want to look like I'm Uma Thurman. They always feel like they are something. But so it's my job if I'm not, okay, if you're looking at a portrait of Sandro and you haven't been moved by it, then I really haven't done my job. So let's go into this little bit of a video I have. And what you'll see about, I don't know, it might be 20, 30 years worth of a timeline of work. And then from there, we'll go in, we'll pick a few of those images out, and we will talk about them. So if you could turn up your volumes, it's a nice little song that you could listen to here, and just kind of look at the images that flow in front of you and enjoy them. Thank you.
Just an amazing piece. So Sandro, before we continue, I just got to ask you, like, how does it start for you? Like, you come up with an idea, any one of those, whether it's the Crowns, the Jazz Singers, Cuba, on and on and on. What what stirs like I got to do this? Like, how does it cultivate in you? Because so many of those take so much production. There's so much time and effort and teamwork around those images and that body of work. How does it start and how do you have the stamina to say I'm going to do this? The Malkovich series, the Crown, whatever it may be, and we could spend hours on each one. But what is it about you that says, I will do this? I have this idea and I'm going to do it.
Well, Frank was, you know, it was a do or die, in the beginning. I was such a freaking mess of a kid, and I needed to figure out something that was, I needed life. I needed love. I needed something that felt right in my life. And when I started taking photographs and started sitting around and having conversations with people and discussing our works together, something started happening, in me. I started feeling that, I was giving something back. I was, receiving a lot. It was my education, but I was making people happy. I mean, and I think that's where a lot of why I do what I do is to make other people happy. Um, it was a very strange time because what happened to me was at the age of 23, I was 1984. I was off to New York. I wanted to go work for Irving Penn. I mean, had always been my dream. And I was married and I had a child. And the talks between me and the wife had started, and all of a sudden, my wife at the time, like I said, I'm 22, 23. She's probably 21, 2021. We have our first child, and she came to me and said, Sandra, I'm just not ready to be a mom. And she goes, I don't know if I could do this. So, long story short, I ended up becoming a single parent at 23. My daughter was 11 months old. And now not only am I responsible for this messed up kid, but now I'm also responsible for this beautiful little daughter, of mine. And the whole idea of going to work for Irving Penn went down the drain. So now it's do or die. I know I want to be a photographer. I know this is what I want to do. This is what I have to do. So, I just go at it. I get a small little studio. I start photographing Chicago blues musicians. I had a partner at the time. He was somewhat of at the time, he was a sales guy. I mean, he had just got out of working at a camera store. And it was just like, hey, let's open up a photo studio together. Okay. He was a salesman. His name was Scott Payne. He was a great, great, great salesman. Ended up being a really, really, really wonderful food photographer, himself. Um, but we started this business together and we started photographing like little silly Chotsky type stuff. It was like a lot of catalog stuff. There was an account by the name of Inesco that made little religious figurines. And then we had Montgomery Wards here in Chicago. And that became places where I could go into and I could start generating some money so I could work on my work, my personal works. From day one, Frank, from day one, 90% of stuff that you just saw there, by the way, everybody, is personal work. Probably 90%, maybe 80, okay? 80, 90% is personal work. It's work that I go out and get for myself. I create it myself because that's longevity. It's not another ad for, I don't care who it is, Nike, Adidas, Apple. That's not longevity. Longevity is doing your own work, your own personal work, because in the end, that's what a great creative director is going to want to buy. They're going to buy your mind, your thoughts, your own creativity. So here I am, 22, 23 years old. I'm going to nightclubs. My mom is watching my daughter. I'm going to blues clubs at nights, and I'm photographing blues musicians, and I'm putting together a portfolio. My first portfolio was of all blues musicians. And I think, Frank, this might be a good place to start with the images that came after this here, because
Okay.
that's where the stories kind of begin.
Okay, go, Jay.
Go, Jay, go. Go, Jay, go. Okay, so it looks like I'm starting. I've gotten past the blues people. So it was very much the blues musicians that I was bringing in to creative directors at Leo Burnett, Ogilvy Mather, Footcomb Belding, all the Chicago agencies. That's what I was walking into. I didn't have a rep at the time, so I'm walking in with basically a portfolio of blues musicians, and I'm getting feedback. Yes or no. They're all black and white. They're only black and white. And I'm beginning to get feedback, and I'm beginning to get some positive reaction. And, at this time, we had a phenomenal photographer in this city that was known, really probably throughout the world, but he was being hired everywhere by everybody. And his name was Mark Hauser. And it was almost impossible to pull a black and white photograph out of the city without Mark Hauser being the guy that was photographing it. But again, I kept on pushing forward. I knew what I liked. I mean, I was so heavily involved and so deep into the mind of Irving Penn and what Irving was creating that I just kept on pushing. I'd bring people in and I'd start photographing them. And it was always this look that I had in mind. So after the blues, there was a period of time where I started photographing bikers. I saw these bikers that were helping out these handicapped kids one time on the streets, and I stopped and just did some snapshots of them. But that gave me the idea of starting to shoot bikers. This is probably 1989. And I start working on a portfolio of bikers. I go to Sturgis, I go to Daytona, I go to Milwaukee, and I start putting together a portfolio of over 500 portraits of of bikers. And I remember going to a lecture on how to make a book, and it was a guy from MIT. His name is Roger Conover. And I remember he gave about an hour and a half lecture, and after the lecture, everybody just like bolted, like they couldn't wait to get out of there. And I just couldn't wait to talk to this guy. So I stuck around, spoke to Roger, showed him a box of prints that I had brought in of these bikers. And Roger says, wow, these are freaking amazing. He goes, can I hold on to the box and see what I could do with them? Okay. So this is about 1994, right in there. And Tina Brown had just started working for the New Yorker magazine. And Tina Brown would be the very first editor that would bring in photography into her magazine. She hired Richard Avedon as a full-time photographer to produce one or two portraits per issue for the magazine. And that's where that magazine started to change. About 6 months after Avedon was introduced, the OJ trial came out. And at that point, Tina hired Annie Leibovitz to cover the OJ trial. And now, for the next few months, you would have these OJ photographs in the magazine. About a year later, as Tina Brown came in, my images were somehow introduced through Roger Conover, my biker images, to Tina Brown. Tina Brown fell in love with those images and ran a 12-page spread in the New Yorker magazine. Now, you got to remember, this is 1994, 1995, right around it. I think it's 1995 issue. We don't have any social media. There is no social media. But you know how many people were subscribing to the New Yorker magazine? 7 million subscribers. 7 million. My work just got in front of 7 million people. Bingo. Sandro is off and running. That's what it took right there. First, it's persistence, it's nonstop, luck. But I stayed
never
after
luck.
to talk to this guy, Nobody stayed. Everybody split, after this guy talked. And I went up and sat down with Roger and talked to Roger Conover. So about We can go through these images here. And then the next image is, so these are just a couple of the biker shots. I'm not going to go into too much because it gets too much and too deep and too long. So then 1994, who's on top of the world and could have ran for president of the United States? Michael Jordan. Okay. So he is the guy. I mean, I don't mean in Chicago. I mean the world. There's two men in this world that have ever brought fame to the world like these two men, Muhammad Ali and Michael Jordan. There is nobody else that's brought as much fame. Nobody's worn t-shirts, jerseys. The names are just household names. Okay. So I get a call to shoot Michael for the very first time in my career. I shot Michael several times in my career. And so that's it, Jay. It's the last one there. So hold that one right there. I get a call to shoot Michael, and it was just because somebody had him in for these TV commercials, and they wanted some portraits of Michael. You know, it was an agency. They called me up and said, it's not for Rayovac, it's not for Gatorade, it's not for Hanes, it's not for the Bulls, it's not for anybody. We just need some really, really great portraits of Michael, and you're going to probably get a minute. And so I remember this was a big deal for me. Huge, huge, huge. I mean, I'm not a starstruck guy, and I wasn't starstruck, but I knew I needed to make this right. So I'm there the night before. I'm setting up for 7 hours. I had the whole idea, you know, I got a man that looked somewhat like Michael Jordan, same height, same skin tone, and worked on this lighting, which, you know, seems really simple, but worked on this lighting for about 7 hours. And as I'm working on this lighting, I'm writing down emotions that I want to get out of Michael. Okay. We don't know when I'm going to get them, but I need to be ready. I need to be 100% ready for Michael. And I was still a young kid, still a young photographer. And there's this tremendous pressure in me. So they gave me this room. He's shooting a TV commercial in the other room. Somebody comes to get me and says, Sandro, Michael will be here in just about a minute. Okay. And you're not going to have a lot of time with him. And I remember Michael walking. Okay. So it's me and I'm a small crew. I got, I think, 2 other guys with me. It's 3 guys. You know, it's not a huge setup. It's a background, but everything needed to be tweaked. Everything needed to be perfect. So Michael comes over, shakes my hand. He's in some clothing that he had for the TV spot. And he comes over and he said, Sandro, he goes, I've got about 2 minutes that I could give you. I said, Michael, let's go to work. I gave him a black turtleneck. He slips it on, and we started going. And he's in this place, and I got my camera set, and I'm a machine, and I'm starting to spit out directions on what I want him to do. And Michael's already an incredible pro at understanding the camera, lighting, demands from a photographer, what's needed. And we're yelling, we're screaming, we're going back and forth, and we're just pounding at it, and we're laughing, we're crying. And then all of a sudden I go to this moment. I said, Michael, I need you to go to a place right now that it really, really hurts. He dipped his head down, and this is the shot that I got. Boom, it took 2 frames, boom, we're off. Back into it, blah, 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 yelling, screaming. I mean, there's all kinds of emotions going back and forth. And in 2.5 minutes, I got 72 portraits off, which is 6. That would be 6 rolls of 12 frames in my Hasselblad. So 2.5 minutes, 72 images. These images, Frank, would go all over the world. Because there's no product. It's Michael Jordan at the height of his career, no product. Nike jumped on these things here. Magazine covers jumped on these things. So again, 1994, 1995, Sandro became a brand. That's when it all happened. Because of Michael Jordan and the biker in the New Yorker magazine, I became a household name.
And how do you manage that, Sandro? How do you manage these moments, you know, these steps on the ladder that you're getting, you're not on the top, but you're pretty close. And, you know, how do you manage that from a studio standpoint, a rep standpoint, a commercial standpoint, you know, all of that, personal projects? How, you know, what are you doing? Because it's do or die, right? I mean, that's the mantra. It's do or die for you in this world.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Well, at the time, I was working with reps, I've always found, it's always sort of, Frank, it's always been like really, really great women, in my life. And I don't mean just, like my spouse, not necessarily my spouses, but my agents or creative directors or people in the business. Uh, Photo editors you'll find so often are women, but it was women that were hiring me. So I had a good team. I had a big team. I mean, I had a machine going. I mean, I want to say it turned overnight, but that year, I was already I was getting really, really busy, but that was the breaking year of when, I really became Sandro. And, I think the management was, I never went into the office. I always hired really good managers who would take care of my money. I knew nothing about the money. I didn't talk about money. I didn't care about money. I only cared about the creativity. I only cared about the shot. Who was next in front of my camera? And that's what I spent my life doing, reading about them, understanding them, trying to figure out what I was going to do with them, what I want to get out of them, the feeling I needed to get. Was it going to be color? Was it going to be black and white? How I was going to present this image. It was all about the creativity. It had nothing to do about money or anything else. And then the other part that comes with it is the madness. And there's a lot of madness. And I can't say I always handled that well growing up. I probably struggled at times. You've got a lot of pressure on you. You've got 8 people in your studio working, and you are trying to control emotions because there's so much emotions going through you because what's coming up next. Every single day, we're getting ready for the next shot. We were working 6, 7 days a week. It was a completely different time than what it is today in photography. So we get done with the Jordan, we're off and running. Then we go into the next shot, Jay. I get this chance to shoot, the other superstar. And this ended up being what the New York magazine used as the obituary full page spread in their magazine when Mohammed passed away. Really quickly on this story, I was given 1 minute with Michael. He was at a ceremony. I set the shot up. Um, I knew I was only going to get him for just a few minutes. I set him down on this chair. I said, Mr. Ali, just have a seat right here and just take a look right in the camera. I gave him a couple of directions. Mr. Ali, please just close your eyes and go to someplace that's so peaceful, very peaceful. Just dream, dream, dream. Boom, 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 boom. Shot, shot, shot. Got it. Mr. Ali, we're done. I walk up to Mr. Ali, put my hand on his lap, and I looked at him and I said, Mr. Ali, I just want to tell you, I am so, so grateful. And I thank you so much for this moment that I've had with you, because not only were you a great boxer, but what you have done for the United States of America and for the Black community is so, so, so important. And I love you for that. That was all I said. I turned around. He got off of his chair. I'm walking away. All of a sudden, I feel this big hand on my shoulder, this huge hand, turns me around. He puts both of his huge hands on my face, kisses me on my cheek, and says, thank you. Those are some of the most beautiful words anybody's ever told me. I turned around and I cried. It was just that powerful of a moment, that powerful. And that shot sat around for years with nothing, which so much of photography does. Photography gets better with time. The use of it comes up later. It doesn't always come at the time that you take the image. There was no real purpose for me to take that shot. Nobody hired me. I wanted to photograph them. I knew the people who were putting on this award center. So, I mean, I would start pounding on doors, knocking on doors, figuring out how I can get this done. You don't always get hired to do the jobs that you want to do. But if you want to photograph Muhammad Ali and you're not going to get hired, you better figure out how to do it. So I remember going to this event center, and got my way in that door and begged to get
So,
just
and what is that, Sandro? What is it that I got to do it? I got to do it. Is it simply perseverance? Is it do or die? I will not be denied. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to find a way to shoot Ali, or any any of the other pieces of work you do. Like, what
strictly,
is it?
strictly perseverance, Frank. And I've always have found that if you speak out of love and care and not demand, and not out of anger, and not, out of a negative place, if you talk from a positive place, things get done. Things will always get done. If you speak from a soft place, from a soft heart, you can get things done. Much more than you can ever by demanding anything and thinking that you're somebody great. If you just pitch yourself, you plant yourself on the ground, you put your feet on the ground, and you're just like the person right next to you or the guy who's, in that gutter, looking for, a burger. You're the same guy. You're the same guy. And if you just treat everybody the same and treat them with love, it'll open doors. And it's been my whole life like that, Frank. All right,
Right.
let's keep it moving.
Go, Jay.
All right, and then we go into this Malkovich. So we can go we saw these in the presentation, but I think a lot of people don't know the story. Some people know the story, but in 2011, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer, neck and throat cancer. I wasn't a drinker, wasn't a smoker, but boom, just one of those things that happened to me. And while I was lying in my bed, whether I was going to make it or not make it, I came up with this idea of how maybe can I possibly thank the great, great, great photographers that came before me, that I could thank them in some way for what they gave to me. And that was the knowledge, I don't know, I want to say the balls to do it, the ideas, whatever it was that Irving, Annie, Avedon, Sassy, Karsh, Demarchier, William Klein, all these great, great, great photographers, all these masters, all these maestros, how could I thank them? How could I say thank you for what you have given me, for this gift that I have had such a great career up until today? And if you give me this chance to come back and shoot, I want to say thank you to you. So I came up with this silly idea of recreating down to the most infinite detail, their most iconic image. And I would do this all with my friend John Malkovich. And I think back about it, and it almost makes me sick to my stomach to think about this project because it was so difficult to pull off.
Give me the time frame on this, Sandro.
2011, I get diagnosed. 2012, I get on an airplane, fly to the south of France to present to John Malkovich. 2013, start researching, building my crew. 13, 14, it's just preparation, a lot of preparation, because every single piece of clothing that you'll see in these had to be made. Every piece of jewelry had to be made. The Picasso hat had to be made. I brought that Picasso hat that Irving shot Picasso in, which is some type of a beaver. I brought it into this German hat maker here in Chicago, and I took him the photograph. I said, "What is this?" He told me what kind of beaver it was. I said, "Find it, make that hat for me right there."
Okay,
$5,000 for the hat.
so Sandro, so now all of this is coming out of your pocket,
All of it's coming out of my pocket.
right?
But you gotta
And
remember, I'm cranking in advertising. I'm cranking. I'm just, I'm nonstop. I'm going 240. I got the right agents charging what we should be getting per day, and usage and usage and usage and usage
and usage.
and
And
usage, which we
right,
don't get anymore.
right. So now this project is coming. You're going to realize this dream, right? When do you see that doing this is also going to help me in the commercial space? Because
Well, Frank, that's a great question, because you're going to see in this presentation where this took me. I never thought of it like that way, Frank. I didn't even know this project would became what this project became. I simply was doing it as a thank you. There wasn't that in my head yet. There was nothing in my head. It was a project. I had the money, Frank,
okay,
because I was making it. And it was a challenge. It was a huge challenge. A challenge to the point like I got sick doing this project because everything had to be so perfect. The prosthetics, the hair, the clothing, the lighting. Okay, it's really easy, when you have Bert Stern, you are Bert Stern, you have Marilyn Monroe, who is, 20 28 years old, 29 years old. You're in the Beaumont Hotel shooting and blah, blah, blah. But when you've got a 60-some-year-old John Malkovich that you want to make look like Marilyn Monroe, and you're not Bert Stern, and you don't have his lights, and you don't have his camera, and you got to figure all that out. You got to figure it all out because it's got to look, it's got to be a perfect recreation.
Why Malkovich?
Well, John and I had met probably about, I don't know, maybe 15 years prior to this, and we had worked together a lot. You know, we were really hitting it off. We became friends. We started doing some art films together. You know, I knew he could do it. And when I went to go see John in the south of France, and we started talking about this, I mean, John says it really well. You know, in an interview, he says, you know, Sandro and I are just like two little boys just playing theater together, you know, and that's what John saw it as. I saw this in him in the south of France. He saw this as theater. And I know John is a perfectionist. There's nobody like John. He understands how it has to be perfect. And he sat and he worked with my hair and makeup people. He worked with my stylist. He worked with my prosthetic people. He was the most delightful gentleman in the world to work with.
And did we do all these in a row, or did we do one or two, stop, and then come back to it? How did it work?
It was, Frank, we could, because of both my schedules and John's schedule, we could only do, in a day, we could do about 5 a day. You know, it's usually a 16-hour day. Okay. So you're going to get 5 a day. If you get 3 days together, you know, because that's about it between he's got to go or I got to go. So you got 15. So the project actually took about 4 years to do in completion. There are 61 images today, Frank. So it's done. You know, it's completely done. It'll never be touched again. But yeah, it was a very, I mean, we're talking sometimes 40 or more people on set. You know, it was a train. And you know, there's behind the scenes films, and there is a new unbelievable book. It's a sumo size book that's coming out. That was why I was in Amsterdam printing just recently. It's a sumo size book of all my Malkovich book. It's like a retrospect of everything I've done Malkovich, and it's filled with behind the scenes images of all these shoots. And that's what's really, really wonderful about this book. So yeah, it was, you know, I worked with really great people. You had to find the best of the best. And you know what, Frank? I'm so proud of my people here in Chicago. So many people that came right from Chicago and pulled this project off. And, you know, you always think New York, New York, New York, LA, 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 LA. Yeah, well, great. You know what? We got it right here in Chicago. And if you look at this project, you find me a tougher project to pull off correctly than this right here. And we did it with mostly 99% Chicago people. Yo, Chicago!
Yeah.
Okay, let's go next. Okay, let's go through these because there's a lot of, and we don't need to stop at each one, but you know, this is just to get an idea. Of course, Irving Penn, Abaddon. And if you look at the details, gang, this is, okay, stop right here. See this chain here? I could not find that chain link there. So I got a jeweler to make it for me.
And you guys collaborated on which images you would try to recreate?
No, it was all me.
Or you decided?
John walks into my studio. John is the perfect subject. He's a white canvas, and he says, Sandro, paint on me. I mean, that's just who John is. You know, John is my muse. John is a muse. John is a great, great, great friend, but John is my greatest muse. And John has never walked in here and said, Sandro, let's try this. Never once. That's not what John was about. John was a white canvas that wanted to be painted on.
Hmm.
This was about a 7-hour shot. Jay, you could probably go just a little faster, just so we can get through the presentation, pal. Thank you, buddy. This was all done. This is not done digital, guys. Okay, I saw how this was done, how that photographer did those arrows. He hung it up with fishing line. I could have done this in a quarter of a time if I wanted to do it in digital. But that wouldn't have been the way to pay homage to the great photographer. I hung every single one of those arrows, just like Fisher did, with fishing line. I did not use the same camera on every shot, but we did shoot most of this digital. That I had to do. You know, the first shot I think was done from 1863, which was a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, which was daguerreotype, you know, up to modern day. I think the most contemporary image is an Annie Leibovitz shot. I think it's this one here. It could be the most contemporary image. So we had to go with all the same, pretty much the same camera. I did use a 4x5 on a few of these here. I researched what type of film they used, or if it was glass plate, what ASA the film was at the time, and we recreated that into our final settings in post. Okay, so here's really quickly here, just to let you know how we would find out how to light these images. We would take Pierre and Gilles' shot of Jean-Paul Gaultier here, and we would blow, go back please, Jay. And we would blow this shot up so the eyes would fill the screen. Just all we're looking at is two eyes. The eyes tells you everything. The eyes are like mirrors. You know, it's this round, glossy circle, and you see everything in the eyes. You can see if there's fill cards. You could see where the lights came from. You can see what kind of light that was used. So that was our information. Everything came from the eyes. We found a silk screener in Chicago that did the exact same process, the exact same style of silk screen as Warhol did. These are silk screens. That's how they're presented in the exhibition. Okay, so Frank, you asked me earlier, you know, so Sandro, you did this, you know, to get more commercial work. Well, no, I didn't. Not at all. I 100% that project because I needed to have something while I laid in that bed. I needed a light at the end of that tunnel, Frank. It was so dark in that room for a year. I needed light. And it was this project that gave me light. It was this project with Malkovich that gave me the strength to carry on, to get up, because it was a tough cancer that we battled. And so I needed only to give me something to live for. And so the project kept on going. You know, I was working crazy commercially, doing this. This was like my little side project is what it was, you know, with Malkovich. And it became this really crazy worldwide exhibited project. So what happens is I'm showing in New York at Yancey Richardson Gallery, and who lives upstairs from Yancey Richardson Gallery? Jody Kwan, the photo editor of the New York Magazine. Jody comes home from work, sees this people pouring out of Yancey's gallery, goes inside the gallery, sees the work on the wall of Malkovich, calls me the next day and asks me to get into her office. And I go over and I see Jody, and Jody says, Sandro, we are going to work together. What you just created in that gallery is nothing less than unbelievable. So it was about 2 or 3 years later when I got the call from Joe. We had done a little bit of work in between this job and when we had that talk, but she comes to me and she says, Sandro, I got this idea of shooting Kate Blanchett, and I want to shoot her. It was for the 1999 or 2000 fall fashion issue. And she goes, I want to take 8 of the most important images ever shot of women, of ever photographed of women, and I want to shoot Kate Blanchett. You do your Malkovich thing with Kate Blanchett. And you come up with the 8 shots that you feel are the most important images of women. So, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, Kate Blanchett can't do it. we almost lose the whole idea. Kate Blanchett is in New York doing theater, can't get out of any rehearsals, so it just kind of ends. So Jody calls me, she goes, Sandro, what do you think about Jessica Lange? I go, Jessica Lange? I go, Jessica Lange is the female John Malkovich. She's perfect. She's incredible. I mean, she really is. If you think about Jessica Lange, she really is the female John Malkovich. She is a chameleon. She can do anything, and she does it, everything she does to perfection. So me and Jessica get on the phone. We talk about the whole project, and Jessica says, Sandro, I don't have 2 days. I go, Jessica, I need 2 days. There's 8 shots here. I have to have 2 days. Sandro, I do not have 2 days. I have 1 day. And I'm thinking to myself, I got 8 shots to do. I go, Jessica, how much time can you give me in that 1 day? Sandro, I'll give you as long as you need. I'll work all day and all night, but you got me 1 day. She came off of set from, what's it called? Something horror, an American Horror Story. Got dropped off in a limousine at our studio. We worked for 16 hours straight on this project here. And she left and went back on set to American Horror Story. So these are all, to me, were some of the greatest images ever photographed of women. All of them using Jessica Lange. Diane Vreeland. Janis Joplin. The great Jimmy Marshall shot. George O'Keeffe. Philip Halsman. And that was Gloria Steinman, the great image of Gloria Steinman. So all these clothes had to be able to be purchased the fall of whatever year we shot this, 99 or 2000. Okay, because it was the fall fashion issue. But it also had to look like the clothing that was in the original shot. So again, think about the twist there. Working together with the stylist, trying to figure out what can we wear, what works, what doesn't work. I mean, it was a trip. I mean, this is a big production. A lot of people, a lot of really good, talented people. My set builder was Annie Leibovitz, set builder for years and years. All those beautiful covers, early covers, Annie did, always done with this set builder. Next image. All right, so again, now I get a call out of the blue from David Lynch. And David Lynch absolutely loves the Malkovich project. Again, we go back to the Malkovich project. David Lynch now is the new guru, the new yogi for TM, Transcendental Meditation. And he says, Sandro, I'm doing this big, huge fundraiser. I'd love for you to create a film for me. You write the script. But here's the guidelines. We need to use about 8 of my characters, eight of my most famous characters. And it's got to be, Sandro, it's got to look just like my sets. And he goes, the work's yours. I wrote like 13 different scripts until he finally gave me the approval. We put together this unbelievable team, and David wanted Malkovich to play 8 of his greatest characters. And what we did is we did a social media study and found out from the people, from the fans, who were the 8 greatest characters in David Lynch films. And here we go. And there's a wonderful 17, 18-minute film that accompanies all of this here. And it's called Psychogenetic Fugue. And to me, John Malkovich has never been better in any film than what he was in this 17-minute film with me. If you would have seen him as Frank Booth, he would have scared the hell out of you.
So Sandro, from a commercial standpoint, anyone looking at your work can say this guy can produce anything and anywhere and make it completely authentic.
Well, Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know Kathy Ryan one time got up in one of her lectures and said, Sandro can shoot anything. That's what it is. A lot of guys just have one style, and I don't want to put any names out there, but to me, it would get pretty boring to photograph the same headshot with four lights hitting that headshot for 30 years.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to mix it up. I got to feel it. I got to do something different. I want a challenge. I need to be challenged. Um, and Frank, I got to tell you something. I'm in Chicago. I have to. I got to work 10 times harder here in Chicago than you do in New York or LA, to stand out. It's not an easy city to become, one of the top dogs. So, anyways, here we go now. So Jody Kwan now finds out again that I'm working with David Lynch to create this film and these portraits. So Jody calls me up and says, Sandra, I'm doing this story on David Lynch. And I know you've got this relationship with David. Do you think you can get David to sit for you? I said, well, I'll try. I'll give it a call, blah, 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 boom, boom. Here you go. Now I'm shooting David Lynch for the New York Magazine. Again, this all started from the Malkovich personal project, money out of my pocket. What does it lead into? These great, great, great gigs. And the reason I think I'm saying this to everybody here is if you are a commercial working photographer, it will always be your personal work. It'll be the work that you do for yourself and on your own that your career will excel. It will not be from the last ad campaign you did. I promise you that. Yeah, you may get a job from it, but longevity and the great, great, great work comes from the personal work that you create.
I don't know how many different ways to say it. And you created a lot of books along the way with your personal work, right? I mean,
Yep.
which become selling tools, right?
I've got 16 done, 3 more in the works, Frank. And then I'm calling it a day. I'm done to wrap.
All right. I hope to get one of those.
Oh, Frank, you can.
Frank, I just wanted to say something, Sandra. The beautiful thing is that it's the same as it was years ago when I started consulting Frank too. We would always encourage photographers, you have to do personal work because the advertising people are not interested in the portrait you did for United, whatever. They are wanting to see your personal work. And it's the same, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
It has to be coming from you.
We got to take care of our soul.
Yes.
Advertising does not take care of our soul.
No, baby.
I would usually feel dead after those shoots. You got somebody behind you, who doesn't get this, doesn't get that, wants to change this. Sometimes from not too clever ideas.
Of course.
You're trying to make them into something great for them. I mean, it's difficult, and so it becomes a little soulless. So you gotta do the personal work for your soul.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the work you've done with John Malkovich, I mean, you two are like these brothers on another planet that just were meant to be. And it's just so great. It really is, really is.
Louisa, thank you so much.
You're what?
We're just 2 little boys playing theater together.
Yes, you are. And who doesn't love that?
Go, Jay.
Any more here, pal?
Hey, Frank, Joel has a question.
Yeah, but continue on. I go. Do we have more images there, Jay? Yeah. Okay.
So I'm giving an hour with David Lynch. And this is a really funny story. So David Lynch comes in to talk to me. We'd already done the film together. He said, Sandra, you're going to get an hour. And so he comes and talks to me. And he's smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee like a madman. And talking to me and talking to me and talking to me. And I was just sitting there talking to him. And we're done talking. He goes, well, you've used 15 minutes of your time. He goes, you got 45 minutes. I go, I'm thinking that like, I'm hitting it off with this guy. I think everything's going to be cool. And no. He's going to stick to his 1 hour. I said, would you please go over there into the next room and let me get my work done, please?
Sandra, how did you do the first David Lynch photo?
Which one? On the pedestal, Frank?
Yes, I'm assuming that was the one that Karen is
on the pedestal. So, Frank, that's all thought out ahead of time.
Yes.
I'm going to walk in to go shoot David Lynch, and I am going to know every single thing that I'm gonna do. I mean, I've got everything already worked out in my Chicago studio. Okay, tape, measurements, the lighting, how I'm gonna do things, blah, 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 blah. Now I just gotta find,
Wait, Jay.
now I'm just gonna find a room in his home, in Mullen Drive, LA, and that I'm gonna be able to set up all these setups. And I need time to set this time up. So my 45 minutes wasn't setting up, it was photographing him. So I needed to get busy. You know, I had like 5 sets up at his home, and everything's figured out, Frank. And of course, what it is that the one with the pedestal, you know, the pedestal was shot here in Chicago, here in my studio, already done. Boom, it's in can. I just got to match that angle with a apparatus that I make here in the studio, bring to studio, and he slips his head in there, Frank, in that apparatus, you know, and so that he's got to put weight on it, so it feels like he's dead. So it's actually been cropped off so that there's weight all down in here. He puts his head into that apparatus. I photograph him, and of course, I put it together in post. And
Right.
that's also the same with the one with the orange background was done. That background was shot back in the studio and done in post. I'm not a big post guy, but I got to tell you, sometimes you just have to embrace it. You know, it's there. You got to use it.
Okay.
So then we go into this project here, and you saw a little bit of this in my video presentation. 2015, there was an act called the Crowns Act that was beginning to be passed state to state. It's not a federal law, it's a state law, which allows Black women to wear their hair the way that their ancestors wore their hair, and that the big corporations had to accept this as their way of wearing their hair, and they could not send them home from work. They couldn't send schools home from work. Now, this has only been passed in about 26 states. It's not passed. It's not nationally passed. So still, there are 24 states that a corporation could send you home because you've got beads in your hair, or you've got it in corn rolls, you know, which has a lot to do with your work ethic, right? So anyways, I started seeing these wonderful women experimenting with hair, with these amazing hairstyles. And I just, you know, had a discussion with my wife. My wife is Haitian, she's Black. And I said, honey, we have to start documenting this here. This is just unbelievable what's going on with hair. And so that's where these pictures come from. These pictures come from, started 2015, ended in probably about 2018, 2019. I did a book with my Italian publisher, Skira, and this book just continues to sell out wherever it goes to. I mean, it's just been a huge hit.
Yeah, Sandro, how do you give us an idea of the challenges you have when you're on location and you're setting up shots? Like, I mean, how do you set up? You know, when you're in India or wherever you are, you know, what's the challenge around that?
Okay, again, Frank, everything that I do when I go on the road, everything has been shot, has been set up in my studio first. Every single element. So I don't take one extra clamp with me. I'm trying to keep everything down to a minimum, because you're traveling in remote places. You know, this is in Johannesburg. You know, you don't want to be carrying 2,000 pounds worth of luggage with you. So you got to really trying to keep it, you know, down to a minute. But I also want to know what I'm going to get. And I got to figure that out in the studio. I'm not going to figure that out with working with these young ladies. I got to know what I'm going to get when I walk in. So I've got this whole life, the way I've got to figure out my look, my style, everything is already figured out. And all these are shot, Frank, not like the new kids would do. These are all shot on these backgrounds.
Oh.
They're not slipped in later. So this is all in camera. And this is, you know, there's a little bit of straightening, but this is really tough to figure out the ratio of where you want, how much light you want on that background, where it's got to be. And most of the time you're working with small pieces, because what I'm doing, I'm going into textile stores wherever I'm going, Johannesburg, Dakar, Abidjan, Chicago, wherever I'm doing these shoots, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, they come in 40 inches wide. That's not very big. So I can't put it 8-10 feet back. I got to have it pretty close up against my subject, which is really not the way to light a background. But it all works out. You know, you figure it out. You go old school, you figure it out, And this is the results of that shoot. And I would try to buy textiles accordingly to the area of from Africa that my sitters would come from, because every area comes with different patterns of textiles.
Mm.
So Frank, if you ever need some underwear, man, I got patterns, pal, that well.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, send them along with the books.
Well, okay, I'm going to make them for you. They'll be really small.
Sandro, this is a family setting.
I kept it family there, Frank.
All right, there you go.
Okay, so now I get into this project here. We'll go really quickly here because some of these also were in the presentation. This is called The Love Between Us is Stronger Than the Hatred Behind Us. And I feel I don't even need to talk about the work after that.
Mm.
You know, you either get it or you don't. This will be shown in the Leica Gallery in LA in April of next year.
And Sandro, all the books that you've produced, are they all, I mean, whatever's still left, are they available on your website so people can
They
check
are,
them?
Frank. Yeah, I mean, some
Okay.
of them are sold out, but yeah, everything is available on the website.
Okay.
I want you to just take just a moment here. Let's go to maybe another one. I want to find one here because this is very intricate what we did here. I mean, this is very difficult. You know, this isn't just layering two images together. You see how through the skin we layered those so that the background shot by the famous photographer, another famous photographer. You know, I don't want to lose his photograph completely, so I wanted it to blend through the image of our couple that are in love with each other.
Yeah. So Sandro, a project like this, does it, as you're shooting it, is it emerging as well? Like, you know, these other things these different elements that come in, or do you already have that in your head? I want to do this, or is there something happens serendipitously, that, you know, that gets us somewhere else?
That's a great question, Frank. You know, I have the idea in my head. Visually, I see it. You know, usually the stuff comes to me while I'm in bed and things will come to me. And but you know, you never see it until you see it. You never understand it yourself until you see it. So you start working and testing it. And of course, it continues to evolve because what happens is, you know, the background shots, you know, my shots can stay pretty consistent, but I'm working with original images that a lot of them were shot in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Okay. So those change. So, you know, it's sort of ever evolving with the style of what kind of a red that you're going to use or how much bleed through that you're going to use. So, you know, right down into the last image, there's 33 of these here. It's continuing to evolve and how much grain we want to have in there.
And did the subjects know that there's going to be an image behind them? You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so they know what you're doing. They get the process.
They don't know the image because I don't know the image, Frank, because every image was absolutely selected for the image that it's used with.
Yeah, and do you have the rights to those images in the background?
Well, Frank, I'm reappropriating.
Ah, okay.
100% in art to reappropriate images. And I will be giving credit. You'll see in April at Leica, every single one of these photographers will have credit right along with my name.
Okay. Richard Prince.
And when I talk about them, I talk about them again, you know, much like my homage to the masters. These guys were the maestros. I mean, these were very brave men and women out in these fields photographing these images.
And these, like I have a dream you wrote there. Are you sharing these ideas with someone that, you know, let's do this, or is this all you and you're not bouncing it off anyone?
No, it's usually just me, Frank.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I have found if I bounce things, especially off of my younger assistants generation, automatically from them, they say, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. It's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. You as a white man, Sandro, should not be shooting black women in their hair. That's what I was told by my younger assistants. So, a camera gives us all freedom. I mean, whites should be shooting whites, blacks, yellows, reds. Blacks should be shooting all of us. This is what brings us together, Frank. If I was told I can't go out and shoot African Americans, that means I wouldn't have been able to do my blues project. That means I wouldn't have been able to do my convicted project. That means I wouldn't have been able to
Cuba.
do my hair project, my Morocco project, my Papua New Guinea project. Could you imagine me sitting around shooting a bunch of white people? I mean, that would just be, it wouldn't have been a career.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been a career. I mean, we need to be allowed to have the freedom to express ourselves as artists. And that camera should give us that freedom. And I will say, thankfully, Frank, every single person, I mean, this has brought me, I've always been very, 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 very close with all cultures. I'm a very, very loving person. This brings me even closer to all of them. We get down and we get to have conversations. I get to learn about them. They get to learn about me. I mean, it's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, team, that's the imagery there. I thank you. I know that was a long presentation to sit through and a lot of talking. I appreciate everybody's attention. You guys have been great. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to
I
talk.
know Joel has a question. He had his hand up. Joel, are you there? Joel? Is he unmuted, Jay?
Joel said enough is enough. He's out of here.
No, he's there. Is your microphone on, Joel? Or you could put a question in the chat room. And you'll see, Sandro, if you go through the chat, everyone is just amazed by this body of work. It's really, really, really stunning.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Frank. And I appreciate your putting me on. I really do, buddy.
No, it's
It's been a lot of fun.
yeah, no, it's a lesson. I mean,
There's so much more, Frank. I've been shooting for like 47 years. There is just boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of projects. I was so crazy to shoot for about 20, 25 years. I couldn't stop. I'd be shooting commercially during the day and personal projects at night. And I would just burn my poor assistants out. We just I just couldn't stop. It was I needed to create and I don't know what was going on, but it was a way of me feeling something. I was feeling something. Something was coming out of my photography that was making me feel good, and that's what I really needed. I was weak. I probably grew up weak and you know, not a lot of confidence. And I think it was the camera and the photography that really helped me, built me into be a man. And made me to be somebody.
yeah.
Or I felt like I was somebody.
Yeah, no, you did it. I mean, here's from Joel. My question: I'm blown away by your work. I've always loved stylistic parodies. I don't find a collection of them on your website. Would you consider making a book of them? So you have a variety of books. If you look in the chat room, that was what Joel put in there.
So what was the question though, Frank? What kind of work? What kind of stylish work?
No. Would you consider making a book of these various collections?
Well, we're working on a retrospect book right now. Supposedly, I've been working with Thames and Hudson for a couple of years on it right now. That's a very difficult process trying to put 47 years of work, or let's just even say 40 years of work. You start out at 25,000 images and you try to get it down to 300 images. It's a process. You got to really release, and that's the biggest problem with us photographers is we think all of our shots are great and wonderful, and they're all our babies, and we've got to learn how to let go. And I've learned really well to let go, but it's still a process. Then you come into pagination and what works with what. So then you go back to something that maybe you released a year ago, and you have to pull it back out to see if it works better with this image here. So we are working on a retrospect book. And I'm hoping, by next year, I got the big sumo book coming out this year. So I'm hoping, Frank, maybe by next year, the retrospect book will come out.
Okay, great. So people just have to go to the website, keep on checking. And what we can do is when the book is finalized, you come back, you show us the process of the book, putting the book together. That would be wonderful. And
That would be lovely, Frank.
we can do that. And if anyone else has any questions, unmute yourself, and you could fire away. But I cannot tell you how thankful I am that you did this and how well behaved you were. That's really
It wasn't
stunning.
easy, Frank. It wasn't easy.
No, I know. It's yeah, I admire your mental strength.
It's
And
probably a good thing I'm on all these drugs for the bronchitis. It's keeping me pretty tame.
good. No, but seriously, I thank you a lot. And
You're welcome.
so
You're
what's
welcome.
next?
I just want to thank everybody so much.
So wait-
Everybody's time is valuable, and I really appreciate everybody being on. I love, I just love to have these type of chats like this. It's so important, Frank, what you're doing. So thank you, buddy.
So what's next for you, Sandro? Is there another project? Is it, where do you go from here?
Well, I'm working on, believe it or not, I'm working on this. I'm in my 5th year, and I'm hoping to be done by the end of this year. It is a documentary on a great Chicago photographer by the name of Mark Hauser.
Right.
So I've been working on that for quite a while, and I got Cindy Crawford, David Copperfield. I don't know if I could even say David Copperfield anymore. Hopefully I can. We'll see what happens. Mellencamp, just a load of cuckoo people from Chicago. Greg Gorham is going to be in it. Oh gosh, Greg. Oh, he was on here earlier. Oh, my mind's slipping. But there's a gentleman who was on here who was in the documentary, one of the greatest creative directors of all time, and he's a great director too. I want to say Greg Paul, but I hope he's not still on. But anyways, yeah, there's a lot of great people in it. So that's what I'm working on. That should be finished by the end of the year.
Okay, great. So we'll look for that.
Greg
again?
John. Greg
Greg-
John.
And there's a number of books that we could find on your website that are still available. So anyone who's looking for some of Sandro's work can find it on his website.
Gary John. Gary.
Gary
Hi,
John.
Gary. I'm so sorry. Gary's in my documentary. Gary's a brilliant man. Gary just finished a great project with Greg Gorman. These two guys are absolutely incredible together. That's who you should have on sometimes, Frank, is get Gary Johns and Greg Gorman. They put together a project of these primitive little beings that are just unbelievable. They're incredible.
Yeah, Gary, please reach out. I'd love to have you. It would be an absolute honor.
He's
to have-
great on film too.
Yeah, get him and Greg.
Yeah.
Greg's a friend as well. So
we know Gorman's great on film. He loves to be on camera. Guy gets more pictures taken of him than he takes pictures today.
yeah, he's got a bunch of workshops. He's traveling all over the world.
Yeah, no, I know.
Just recently.
He's quite a guy.
Yeah, very lucky to know him. Lucky to know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if anyone has any questions, great, fire away. But if not, Sandro, I thank you very much. As a friend, you've always been, by my side through all these craziness of all the years and trials and tribulations. So, thanks.
I love you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and thanks also to Jay for helping Sandro out and Cloudy for holding Sandro's hand.